All right, council member, we are live on YouTube and you may begin when you're ready.
My apologies that we are starting a few minutes late, but welcome. I am Robert White, Council Member at Large and Chair of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. Today is Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, and we're meeting remotely via the Zoom teleconferencing platform. The time is now 12:12 p.m., and I'm calling to order this public roundtable of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. The Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions and really our entire ANC system is at an inflection point. When our ANCs were founded, being an ANC meant signing up for a monthly in-person meeting at a local school or library. Commissioners started their terms by gathering together, taking a short course, and walking away with a book that explained the ins and outs of the role. After that, each commission largely handled their work independently other than reporting how they spent their money. A well-equipped commissioner was someone who had a list of agency phone numbers, an understanding of what each agency did, and maybe a copy of Robert's Rules of Order. Resolutions were mailed to their recipients with a postage stamp. What paperwork was required was often completed at the meeting with a typewriter or note taker and hard copy. Technology needs didn't extend far beyond finding a room with adequate lighting for meetings that ran late. Community engagement often meant only listening to those people who had the time, energy, and know-how to show up in person at the right place and right time and speak in front of a crowd. When an ANC completed their term, one of the last things they did is file a hard copy annual report in a filing cabinet somewhere to recap what they accomplished. And to operate like that, ANCs had more money available than they do now. Times have changed. Commissioners are finding themselves facing rapidly escalating demands, requiring multiple skill sets and more time. They enter office and can't wait for the delivery of a hard copy book in order to start assisting their constituents. They are often expected to work around the clock, to be accessible by cell phone and email, and are frequently engaged on multiple social media platforms. They must understand numerous online agency portals and often are expected to maintain robust, dynamic websites themselves. They must now navigate a massive $18.4 billion government bureaucracy for their neighbors. To help, commissioners are geotagging issues for agency resolution, live chatting with constituents, and meeting their neighbors when and where they are available, in person or virtually. ANC meetings are now online or simultaneously live streamed across multiple platforms. Financial reporting is done through Excel spreadsheets. In addition, we all now know that accessibility must be at the core of our work, and commissioners are expected to have the tools to partner with colleagues and constituents who are deaf, hard of hearing, who don't speak English as a first language, or who have a communications barrier. In fact, ANCs are called upon to operate even when one of their members is serving constituents from inside of DC jail. For better or for worse, these changes are not slowing down. While commissioners must maintain the skills they need to reach residents who don't have access to modern technology, they are simultaneously being asked to utilize next generation community engagement applications. When pandemic operations end, many ANCs will choose to move to hybrid meetings with commissioners and members of the public, both in person and online, engaging at some meeting. Commissions will need to have Wi-Fi, compatible microphones, speakers, laptops, presentation screens, and carefully configured Room and WebEx accounts. And commissioners are supposed to figure out all of this stuff as volunteers, while also often working full-time and caring for their families. It simply is not possible for commissioners to meet all these expectations without more support. That means the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions has to keep changing. More services need to be offered centrally, and commissioners must benefit from more training, technical assistance, and turnkey services that are ready to go on day one. The council has nearly doubled the budget for ANC since 2019 and added more staff. We have funded sign language interpretation, language translation, training, technical assistance, remote and hybrid meeting assistance, website assistance, and expert assistance, among a number of other changes. While I have fought for these funding increases, these efforts have been led and the ideas have come from commissioners themselves. Unfortunately, until recently, many of those projects stalled for years while reasonable demands from ANCs for more assistance piled up. That's why in this budget, I funded a strategic planning process for the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, which we are kicking off with this roundtable. This process will be finalized by a new permanent director of the OANC after one is selected later this spring. My goal today is to get your input on the future of the OANC. What should the office prioritize now, next year, 3 years from now? What supports should it provide? What resources does it need? How should it engage with commissioners? How can we prepare for the future? And what laws need to change along the way? We cannot afford to be tied down by what worked 10 years ago or even yesterday. The OANC must be driven by what commissioners need today and what they will need tomorrow. Because while the world is changing, one thing has remained the same. This government works best when it listens to our residents, to the people most impacted by our work. Our commissioners serve as the voices of the people who might otherwise get left out of the conversations in the Wilson building. We in the council cannot do our work without our commissioners standing up for the people that we serve. At the same time, our commissioners can't do their work unless we stand up for them. That's what today's hearing roundtable is all about. So I want to start receiving testimony. And as we prepare for that, let me lay out the ground rules for our public witnesses. Everyone should have received a copy of the witness list yesterday. I'll call our witnesses from that list. When I do, the staff will promote you so that you can testify. When you are promoted, you will drop out of the roundtable momentarily and come back into the hearing as a panelist. At that time, you can unmute yourself. Public witnesses will be provided with 4 minutes to testify, and it is the practice of this committee to allow advisory neighborhood commissioners 5 minutes to testify because of their role as elected officials. We will do panels of 6, and I will call up our first panel of witnesses. So let me start with, and I know some folks aren't here, so I'll call more than 6, but our goal is to get to 6. Chander Jayaraman, Lucky Barbieri, Gordon Chafin, Sharice Crawford, Robert Becker, Commissioner Jeffrey Ruckauger, Commissioner Paul Johnson, Commissioner Renee Bowser. I think we have. Commissioner Jeremiah Montague, Commissioner Kelvin Brown, Commissioner Gerald Soufray, and Commissioner Dorothy Douglas. Hopefully that gets us to 6. Mr. Jayaraman, welcome. Good to see you. You can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you very much. I guess this afternoon. So good afternoon, Chairman White and members of the committee. First, I want to thank you, Chairman White, for your leadership in recognizing that the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions is at a critical juncture in its evolution. And what we will hear today from both the public and ANC commissioners will be the first ever discussion on a strategic plan for the Office of Neighborhood Commissions. The strategic plan, which this committee has directed to be prepared, and the testimony you will hear today, has broad implications for the entire ANC component of our government. This strategic plan can serve as the basis for a whole new approach and also has implications for the budget for OANC for fiscal year 2023. What we will hear today will leave no doubt that the OANC mission and its budget need to be greatly expanded in order to support this very important part of the district's democratic system of government. As background, I served as chair and vice chair and ANC commissioner from 2012 to 2020 on Anc Advisory Neighborhood Commission 6B, which covers the southeast quadrant of Capitol Hill and Hill East. Since then, I've continued to volunteer my time to support ANC 6B on a variety of issues, from ABRA cases to public meetings on crime, as well as providing advice on other requests for support. I also convened the first citywide virtual meeting of ANC commissioners from across the city, which has continued for the past 3 years to discuss and share ideas on citywide topics of concerns. From those conversations, it is clear the commissioners recognize the need for the development and implementation of a strategic plan for the ONC to ensure that our locally elected officials get the support they need and deserve. As you know, Mr. Chairman, ANC commissioners are unpaid volunteers who want to have a meaningful impact on their community and decided to run for office to become the elected official for their single member district. Many commissioners, as you mentioned, hold full-time jobs, have family responsibilities, or are involved in their local civic organizations or churches. So much of the work is done during the evenings and on weekends. That's all to say that the ONC has an important role to play in helping commissioners be the best and most effective representative they can be. Additionally, the rise in the population of District of Columbia and the current redistricting process will create 40 to 50 new single-member districts and 8 to 10 additional advisory neighborhood commissions. This is a significant growth in the number of commissioners, which will translate into greater demand for guidance, advice, and support from the ONC, which necessitates additional funding in the FY23 budget. You know, while preparing my testimony, I reflected back to when I was first elected commissioner and will focus my remarks on what would have helped me in becoming an effective commissioner. In my view, being an ANC commissioner is similar to taking on a new job. As with any job, a new employee often goes through an onboarding process that involves getting to know fellow colleagues, receiving training on workplace processes and systems, and briefing on projects and deliverables. Similarly, I believe that ANC commissioners also deserve an onboarding process to support them in becoming an effective commissioner. I remember when I got elected, I was energized to learn about what the job of commissioner involved, but clueless about where to start. I believe that the 5 to 6 weeks between election day and the swearing in would be ideal for such an onboarding process, and new commissioners would be well served by utilizing that time frame for training. The ONC should harness the energy and excitement of being elected to office to develop the knowledge base of new commissioners. I could envision that each week during that time frame, the ONC would hold a series of hour-long virtual trainings to cover the basis of how commissions operate, the types of cases the commissions regularly consider, BZA, ABRA, or where to look and find information from city agency portals. These could be recorded and made available so it can be viewed by new commissioners at any time that's most convenient to them. I also recognize that there's a vast amount of untapped expertise with current and former commissioners across the city. To tap into that expertise, a series of trainings could be coupled with convening a panel of experienced commissioners for a question and answer session on effective strategies of what works and getting advice on complicated issues. Together, I believe that creating an onboarding process that taps the expertise of current and former commissioners and the energy of newly elected commissioners after Election Day can be an efficient strategy for supporting commissioners and becoming an effective representative for their constituents. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I will be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Gordon Chafin.
Thank you, Council Member. My name is Gordon Chaffin. I'm a resident of Ward 5, and I have worked with 2 different ANCs for the last few years as contract employees, and I have covered the ANCs across the whole district as a journalist. I'm speaking today because my experience with all of the ANC commissions is that while serving as an ANC commissioner should be an opportunity for turnkey public service, you run for office, you are trained in the way that Chander just mentioned, and then you can deal with the substance of your decision-making in the meetings during your term. Unfortunately, that's not the reality for almost all ANC commissioners. In my experience, they spend a great deal of certainly their first year, if not their entire first term, figuring out who to email, how to get assistance for different subject matter issues, how to get basic assistance on 311 requests that are erroneously closed, which I know that you've dealt with before, Council Member. Basically, it's a process that in its ideal should serve as a way for people to come in and out of service as they have time in their lives. But in my experience, there's just two different types of commissioners. There are commissioners around my age in their 30s who are first getting involved in their communities, learning about civic associations, citizens associations, and the ANCs. And then there are retired persons who have the time, their kids are out of the nest, because the process of serving as an ANC commissioner is so much devoted to the just getting up to running speed. It's my belief that the OANC should significantly staff up and significantly provide services for ANC commissioners so that their time as an ANC commissioner is about that turnkey process. You have technology, I'm an audio video professional in addition to other things, and that hybrid meetings are going to require a lot more equipment, enough oversight authority to get a large scale AV contract that includes also websites, the disclosure and warehousing and databasing of things like financial reports, resolutions. An example is the ANC resolution portal. It's great, but only maybe a third to a half of ANCs even upload their resolutions to it. So there are elements of this plan that should include a larger staff, larger budget, but everything, the basic theme here is that being an ANC commissioner, it's an experience that differs a great deal by who your predecessor was and how well run the previous commission was. And there's a great deal of heterogeneity on that. You have commissions like 5D and 4B, which recently had to take over. They had a bunch of new commissioners elected and had to basically reconstruct their processes from derelict previous commissioners. There's an example that happened with me when I was a contract employee. There wasn't a lot of guidance on formulating a contract with an employee or resolving disputes. So these lots of issues like this, but overall, there's a lot of additional work that needs to be done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaffin, and I apologize I mispronounced your name. Robert Becker, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the DC Open Government Coalition, thank you for giving us the opportunity to address the strategic plan. I am a member of the coalition board and a Ward 4 resident served by ANC 34G. Since the 1990s, a major focus of public records legislation has been to maximize publication of records to reduce the need for FOIA requests. Following that trend in 2000, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You just went on mute. I could hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Suddenly my earbuds muted themselves.
No problem. Your time is up now. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Please, yeah, please continue.
Okay. Anyhow, I helped draft the 2000 amendments and several subsequent FOIA bills. And over 2 decades, I have learned that improving information infrastructure is fundamental to improving public access to records. In DC, the executive agencies and the council have leveraged information technology to comply with the FOI Act. But the 40 ANCs and their nearly 300 commissioners have been left to their own devices, literally and figuratively. They have used their own computers, cell phones, messaging apps, cloud storage accounts, and ISPs. The OANC publishes no policies, training materials, or regulations governing records management, and the ANC handbook says nothing about that or FOIA compliance. In 2020, the council created the Technical Support Fund, and last month, OANC staff said OCTO will provide those services. But the OANC has dispersed no funds to ANCs to acquire needed technology. For our purposes today, it's important to recognize that the 2020 legislation does not address records management infrastructure. The OANC does not consider providing those services its duty, and the ACTOS report does not address those concerns either. ANCs are public bodies like the executive agencies and must comply with detailed public records management statutes. But because they have no rudimentary systems to do that, they can't comply. They can't comply effectively with FOIA either. To remedy these shortcomings, the strategic plan should clearly set out what OANC must do to create and operate an information infrastructure for ANCs. It should include a timeline for implementation, estimate costs, and identify funding sources, and set criteria for evaluating OANC performance. But there are 2 issues not necessarily related to the strategic plan the council should address now. To improve ANC transparency. It should give the Office of Open Government authority to adjudicate administrative appeals from ANC FOIA denials, and it should require ANCs to comply with the Open Meetings Act. Currently, a requester denied access by an executive agency may appeal to the mayor, but ANCs as legislative bodies are immune to adjudication by the mayor. Giving the OOG ability to adjudicate those appeals would be an incremental expansion of its power, but it would give requesters a low-cost, relatively rapid procedure to vindicate their rights. And for years, some ANCs have chosen to comply with the OMA. Others don't even comply with the less stringent requirements of Section 1-309.11. Every year, the OOG receives complaints about ANC open meetings violations, but it is powerless to do anything about it. The OMA's requirements are not burdensome, and every other elected and appointed body complies with them. There is no rational justification for excluding the ANCs and denying residents the assistance of the OOG to resolve them. Thanks again for allowing us to testify. We look forward to working with you on this and other issues related to the ANCs.
Thank you very much. Next is Commissioner Ruckauer. Welcome. You're on mute, Commissioner.
There it goes.
Perfect.
Good afternoon. I wanted to start off, a lot of what I was said actually was echoes what your opening remarks were. So I'll try to not repeat everything. But as you said, advisory neighborhood commissions are no longer basic neighborhood help desks or complaint departments. We have to also understand a lot more in terms of what constitutes safe streets, or what is inclusive zoning, and what is equity in housing or transportation or district services. We need a better comprehensive resource for querying the district's legal and regulatory databases. Instead of having to wade through endless pages of legalese and gotchas that turn what looked like something was the answer into a frustrating waste of time, or to discover another regulation that didn't turn up in the initial results contradicts or nullifies what you thought it was. I've been bitten by this a number of times when trying to research zoning and building code questions and also ABRA regulations. It would be a huge benefit to commissioners to have ready reference material for areas many of us all work in. For instance, even with the introductory training Office of Zoning provides, it still can be excruciating to try to determine which rules apply to an application. Likewise for building or fire code questions. ANC 2B recently reviewed a zoning application that raised a concern about its fire code compliance. The regulations stated one thing, but in other sections, a slew of variations and exceptions put it all into question as to what actually applied. Rules regarding mixed-use buildings vary greatly according to specific use purposes. DCRA said it depends, but they couldn't look at the BZA filing to give us an answer unless the applicant requested a review or was referred by zoning to DCRA. In that meeting, we were then bullied several times by the applicant's attorney with remarks like zoning never looks at fire code or egress to public way doesn't apply to this. Not having access to definitive answers means that we can't effectively raise concerns or reach informed decisions on applications before us. My vision for the ANC is that it takes many of the technology, business support, and basic research functions off our hands, that it develops and guides an agency contact list for subjects commissioners routinely handle. Zoning or historic preservation, DCRA permitting, inspections, public works, DDOT, Vision Zero. All of these issues are things that we are constantly reinventing or re-researching in every ANC and every time there's a turnover. And that information is generally not passed along to newer commissions. Even looking back at what we did a year ago can sometimes be a very frustrating process. We should also, the ONC should also consider developing consistent guidelines for how do you write resolutions or minutes or treasurer's reports. Even within an ANC, these can vary over time and can be very difficult to research when you want to see what did we do a year ago. And that, that the information can be, you have to read something 3 or 4 times before you actually find what you're looking for. Also, that it will create a central repository of all of this for all of the ANCs, so that all of our resolutions, we can, any ANC or any commissioner can look up what any other ANC did on a given subject. That also helps solve the institutional memory loss issues. So it would all make it, as something that's indexed, we would then have access, and it would also make it easier for the public to know what's going on. On the subject of FOIAs, some ANCs want to handle them themselves. I think that should be something that is handled centrally, either by OANC or by the Council's FOIA compliance unit. If anything, if we have this centralized data platform, information management platform, it would be a lot easier for OANC or the Council FOIA to be able to look up relevant information without us individual commissioners having to dig through their emails or text records. Let's see. And one of the other things that we have issues with is notification timelines. We're supposed to have like 30 to 45 days of advance notice of something like a DDOT NOI. As it stands, that is often missed, that we receive notifications that are too late or not timely enough to get onto our calendars, either with committees or with the ANC itself. And that can lead to either very frantic scramble by the commissions, or in sometimes even missing the opportunity to weigh in on an issue because of how a notice is sent out and received, and that there be a means of enforcing that. That would probably be more of a council matter than the OANC, but the OANC should be able to assist in enforcing those notification requirements.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, we're about a little more than a minute over time, so I'll ask you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing the clock here.
No problem. But
Okay.
I will have a number of questions though.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Commissioner Sroufe.
I'm wondering if that was Schroef that you were pronouncing.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Sroufe. Yeah, thank you very much.
That explains my hesitancy.
There we are.
And
my apologies.
It's not that I'm shy, but right now I don't see the camera, so I'm just going to, this could be it here.
Okay.
There you go.
There we are.
All right, thank you, Commissioner, for this opportunity. I regard the ANC as a major governmental innovation at the local level. And anytime I can say something to we're happy to do so. We often talk about unintended consequences as negatives. I think the ANC is an example of a very positive unintended consequence. I have one comment and a couple of suggestions to make. I make them with some trepidation, and obviously they are the views of a single commissioner, not a commission. First comment is, I think today we're not actually dealing with a strategic plan, but we're dealing with a set of wishes that would make our work better, which is always desirable and might be the start of a strategic plan. But you really have to consider the trade-offs involved. You have to consider the resources involved, and you have to consider how to work the system to get the goals that you're trying to achieve. Today, we're talking, so far at least, about what we would like to have happen, which is a good beginning. The two things that I think I hear from the preceding comments and from the materials is that we need a more robust staff, probably with more specific skills, and we need a director that who is an advocate for the ANCs and for the ANC movement, both at the legislative level and within the executive branch. This is a little sticky for the political aspects of it, but recently we've received a barrage of emails from one district agency saying that they're going to become more efficient and effective by eliminating community input. There is a role here for a strong ANC director to help us say, not this way. The second thing I think we need is an ANC director who has a sense of what I would call strategic thinking. Not that we have not had that, but that's essential as we go forward. Again, most of what we're talking about today is how to do what we presently do better. It is not about what we might do or what other circumstances might be implied. I have only two suggestions. One is, I address this to the councilman. I'm not of DC government. I'm from the education world, but when we do a search for a new director, we do a search for a director that is ambitious and aggressive. And I'm a little disappointed in what I've seen with regard to this search. because I don't see that kind of approach being taken. Consider if it were the superintendent of schools, for example. I think it's equally important to the district. The final thing I would say is that what I call the Monday night group has demonstrated a wish on the part of many commissioners, at least, to have a closer relationship with the OANC than it has had traditionally. I have a specific recommendation in this regard. I think it relates to strategic planning because I think the governance structure of the ANCs is important. And that is that the new director be given the authority to appoint an advisory committee made up of one representative from each ANC, whose job would be to be a liaison between the director and the ANCs. This is a little different than what we have now in that it would be comprehensive, would involve all ANCs, and would be a specific role assigned through the governance structure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Douglas, welcome.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I apologize. Let me see that smile there, Mr. Wright.
I see you. We can hear you loud and clear.
Fine. How's the family and everybody? I thank everybody else for being on here. But everybody had basically said everything that I've been speaking on for years. And the only thing different, Councilman Robert White, is that I think you don't need to change the laws because the laws are in place that we should be following. But the question is they're not following the laws. They're ignoring them. That's dealing with the DC government agency, DDOT and DCRA and all the others. From what I'm hearing, it's the same thing I'm repeating, has been repeated since I've been ANC since 1992. So what I'm saying, back there then, they had a pamphlet that each agency had information to share with the community, what each agency was all about and what the process was, what was the training opportunity that you gotten to work to understand what was going on. So what's happening now is that we're not getting those services that we should be. So my concern is that we need to continue to do that and have little booklets and pamphlets and follow the laws and rules and regulations like everybody else. And what I'm saying, and I'm not saying I had a conversation with Ms. Dana Dickinson yesterday that I thought that I was really kind of not too happy how it happened. But the question is that something was changed about we should give a resolution for something that in a law that didn't require resolution. It said to follow the law and it spelled out what the law was and what we need to follow. So I think that goes to show. So if you're saying one thing to me as a commissioner and not the right information, you're being misled. So I just want to say no disrespect to Mrs. Dickinson. I know she was following Mrs. Grant's speaking on her behalf, but you need to be careful how you say things, because when you say something, refer something that I would share with that because I they didn't want to give me a certain cell phone or whatever because they felt that I was would be taking too much away from the commissioners, that I'd be taking advantage of it. Now that statement came from her, but it shouldn't have came from her in that manner. I think she should have really got the resources or not discuss it at all. So you need to watch what you're saying and how you say it, because then other folks will be blamed for what hearsay don't get it. And I'm going back again. I like to have those documents about other ANCs going into another ANC commissioner's boundaries. And the law DC L 14-13.3 say that you cannot. Now I sent that to the ANC, and I would appreciate you once again. I'm gonna ask this about 20 times. Please provide that, and I asked them. I have yet to receive it and other information. And everybody's already spoken on what I want to say, but we need to do more. And I think the DC government agency needs to respect us and also understand this. They don't understand this and don't understand how important the input of the community is, and that single member district should be involved with. So that's all I need to say. And I think that everybody had ever spoken, but if you would just yield to that, and we appreciate that, and proper notification, just like I got something from DDOT yesterday about maybe about 4 hours before I got it, and we have not meeting tonight. That's not called for. So they need to give us a timely, like I say, 45 days according to the mandate of the mayor that's already set in place. So the agency needs to follow the process as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. I don't know if this makes you feel better or worse, but the council has the same problem with getting documents on the timeline that the law requires, or agencies just not following the law. It's regrettable, but it is something that we deal with as well, and something that needs to be fixed. Let me run through several questions, and I really appreciate everyone's testimony. Mr. Jayaraman, you testified about improvements in the onboarding process, or recommendations for a better onboarding process. How does your recommendation differ from what exists now?
I don't believe, well, what happens right now is that any sort of training occurs only after swearing in first or the second of a particular year. And so it's historically, there's been some sort of marathon training of 8 hours or more to go over the legislation that created the ANCs, and or to go through the handbook that is published and distributed. While that's fine, often commissions meet at the very beginning. For example, ANC 6B meets the second Tuesday of the month. So that's literally a week to 10 days after swearing in, where you're a new commissioner and you're expected to potentially vote on some cases that are there, because the cases don't stop. So what I'm proposing is that we use that energy in that time between November and January, when we know who's going to be the next new commissioner for a particular SMD, say, hey, we want to get you up to speed before your first meeting. And use that time and that energy, that enthusiasm of newly elected commissioners to say, hey, this is what you need to know.
Okay, I appreciate that. And Mr. Chafin, when you talk about turnkey technology, can you talk about some examples of what you mean by that?
Yes, a couple commissioners mentioned something like this, but so if you get elected to a commission and you're looking to see the decision-making history of your SMD or even just your commission as a whole, my understanding is it's very hard to collect that. If your immediate predecessor has good records, you can reconstruct the last few years. But if you're going back even to like the 2000s or the 1990s, I'm not sure it's possible to really construct. If you're looking for the site of a single ABRA case where there's several businesses that might have occupied that space, and residents make claims about, well, it was X business 10 years ago and that failed, or you can't really adjudicate these types of histories. And the agencies don't provide that kind of help. And then also, as we've expanded digital access to participation in meetings, there isn't, I have not seen, again, as an audio video professional, I have not seen a good effort to centralize and save those meeting histories, either the chats or the actual audio video. And so thinking into the future, how is it going to be possible for an ANC commissioner who gets elected in 2026 to reconstruct the last 10 years, or at least from, today as we're talking? And so it's like the minutes, and again, it's all these different types of records that help you reconstruct the public decision-making process. And right now, there doesn't seem to be a good asset, unless, again, your immediate predecessor or the commission you're going into is itself unique and robust in this way.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Becker, you mentioned concern with commissioners using their own phones and sort of apps and programs, but the commissions can, at this point, purchase cell phones for commissioners. So what change are you suggesting is necessary?
Mr. Chairman, the change I'm suggesting is that all for executive branch agencies and for the council, all emails, text messages, and other types of communications are preserved because there are robust management systems for keeping those records somewhere in one place. For the ANC commissioners, because they're all using their own devices, and as Mr. Chaffin just explained, you have to rely on the person who was there before you or the person before that to get the records. There should be a central repository for all of this stuff to comply with DC law as it is written now, and no system exists.
So let's say my legislative director, for instance, is gone from my office for 2 years. I'm not sure her email still exists. Maybe they do. I don't know.
They should exist.
They do?
There is a procedure for making sure that all emails are preserved.
Okay.
And if you use a private phone or a private account, you're supposed to copy your government account so that is preserved.
Right. But with respect to ANCs that use their ANC email addresses, are those not preserved?
They are if they're using their email addresses, but we know because there's been litigation that not all of them are using their
Right.
government email addresses.
Yeah, so this is a long-standing problem, and I'm not sure what the solution is here, other than, I mean, if unless we consider it sort of like infractions, but there's no sort of need to change the law or technology because both the law and technology exist now, but for whatever reason. And maybe it's the technology. Maybe commissioners feel like the email system is out of date and inconvenient. I don't know why so many commissioners don't use their official emails. But is there a change that you're suggesting that might result in more commissioners using their official email addresses?
I think what we're talking about is sort of a more holistic approach to preserving and securing all of the data and documents and whatever records that are created by ANC commissioners or received from agencies or from people outside the government, so that there is some central system, as there is for both for the council and separately for the executive, where all of this stuff has a place to live. Okay. And it's retrievable and it's secure and not, we hope, immune from hacking, but certainly more immune than whatever haphazard systems are being used by the ANCs.
Okay. And I do want to let you know the tech support and expert assistance funds should be ready very shortly. We got an update from the OANC, I think yesterday. So we just need to review that, but that should be coming very, very shortly. Let me get a clarification on one other thing. You believe that FOIA appeals should be handled by whom?
By the Office of Open Government.
Okay.
Okay.
And
when a FOIA case goes to the council, unfortunately, the only recourse if the council denies the request is to go to court. If it goes if it's a FOIA request to an executive agency, then there's an appeal to the mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. There is, for the same reason that you don't have an appeal system, an administrative appeal system, the ANCs don't either.
Right.
But it would be very easy to give the Office of Open Government authority to do that. And that saves the requester. The requester can do an administrative appeal without a lawyer, without any expense. And it happens fairly quickly. If you have to go to court, it's very expensive and it's very time consuming.
Yeah.
The goal would be to reduce that.
The Office of Open Government is it affiliated with it's who appoints the members of the Office of Open Government?
Well, the Office of Open Government is part of BIGA in the same way that the Office of Ethics is part of BIGA.
Okay.
BIGA has the authority to adjudicate issues related to both branches of government.
Can I ask Commissioner Jayaraman, Douglas, and Ruckower if they have thoughts on this FOIA process, giving the Office of Open Government authority over FOIA appeals?
I think.
Well, I just want to say, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say, I think it's a great idea. And I think what he's saying is actually so true. Because a lot right now, the information that we get on our personal phone, even as ANC phones, that those that have it, supposed to get sent to the archives, and that's another thing. The process is just not happening. So I know you said that I might not agree. Well, you didn't say really agree, but you said I might have a different opinion about it. But I'm old school, and I believe what it is. If you know something is not done right and should be done right, and giving excuses, then that means that we're going to continue to fail. So if you're doing the right thing, you don't have to worry about what you're doing right. So my question to that, I think that we need to make sure that the right thing is being done in the beginning and not being ignored and also being overlooked.
Commissioner Ruckower.
I think the idea of consolidating FOIA is paramount. Because if you have it that it's left up to individual ANCs or individual commissioners to handle their requests, you're kind of asking, you're asking the wolf to guard the hen house. So you want to keep, keeping it that it's fair and accessible to the public. And then combining it with this centralized repository that I keep talking about would make a lot of sense, because right now in ANC 2B, when we write a resolution, that gets archived into our website, which is we can sort of search it. It works reasonably well, but it's not perfect. It's very hard to go back further than the existence of the website. And it also, like the issue with devices and such. I mean, I use my official address for almost everything that's related to my commissioner work. Stuff that gets on my phone, I'm not saving stuff locally. Occasionally, a constituent will write to me on my private email address, and I'll forward it, and I'll tell them, please, use the official address. Phone calls and texting, that's a different story, because we don't get, or at least we don't have any like official phone numbers to use. So I'm using a Google Voice that's separate from my own, from my personal number for dealing with constituent matters. But there's nowhere for me to send that to. I mean, that stuff exists in Google right now, but at some point when my term ends, unless somebody tells me, okay, forward everything here or dump everything here, it's going to vanish when I give up that number. So there's no earth-shattering work because I hate texting. But if somebody does leave me a lengthy voicemail about a problem, that needs to be stored somewhere, and we have no guidance where to do it.
And Commissioner Shroof, I apologize, Mr. Jayaraman. I wanted to get to the commissioners on this one, and I'll come to you in a minute. Commissioner Shroof, do you have thoughts on this?
No, I didn't. I had understood as a new commissioner a few years ago that we were to use everything on the official email and phone account, and that's what I've done. I didn't know there was an option to do it otherwise, so I don't have an opinion.
There is not an option.
Okay.
Some people create an option. And Mr. Becker, just on this point that Commissioner Ruckower raised, what of text messages? I mean, you know, when folks live in a community, a lot of people have their number. They're going to text them frequently. What's the best way to deal with this?
Well, if the commissioners have government phones, then, you know, the texts are done on the government accounts. I mean, you can't avoid people texting your personal number if they know it. But with the emails, I guess the appropriate procedure would be, I don't text a lot. I do a little bit, but forwarding, making sure that texts are copied to your official account as well as to your phone, to your personal phone, if you can do that, so that they get stored on something that's controlled, that the government is monitoring and is responsible for keeping the data from.
Mr. Jayarama, did you have something to add on this?
Yeah, I know ANC 6B faced this just before we switched over to the official ANC .dc.gov email addresses. There was a FOIA request, and there was some concern about how do we get email addresses and email or information or documents from a previous commissioner, and it just wasn't possible. It wasn't, because they were no longer a commissioner. That information essentially could not be FOIA'd because it was a personal. Now that person was a personal individual and a citizen, and you couldn't reach out to them to get information from there. So everyone started using the anc.dc.gov email addresses, because it was our understanding at the time that any FOIA request would go to OANC. They would then send it over to Octo, and Octo would then deal with it and provide any documentation on that matter. But it is a concern for me that that just means only whatever is on that email address is available. No draft work products, no other work products that may be on the personal computer of a former commissioner is a retrieve.
Appreciate it.
So, mind if I weigh in a second?
Sure.
So, speaking as a journalist and somebody who has FOIA'd several ANCs, it is a hopelessly depressing process. In 2019, I believe I FOIA'd 7 or 8 different commissions about a similar matter, and I received a response from one ANC. I had emailed then OANC Director Gottlieb Simon and CC'd the chair of those commissions, which was what I was instructed to do. A couple of them got back to me. A couple of them never got back to me at all about anything. And again, I got one back. So I think I had heard similar things, that some commissions decide to just let OANC handle it. And since their email accounts can be accessed outside by Octo or whomever. But speaking as a journalist, it's the cost benefit of like FOIAing something, unless it's an extremely controversial issue where reporting that leads nowhere is something you got to do it. It's just very, very hard. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, when I say turnkey public service, all of what's just been described is the opposite of that. So as an example, ANC 1C has a Google Drive that they've set up to help organize their documents, the draft product, stuff that was just mentioned. I'm guessing that if they were FOIA'd, it would be easy to turn that over. But, over 2, 4, 6 years, all the people who created the Google Drive account at the beginning will be gone, probably. And so this, I'm trying to think of the evidence term. Basically, like ownership and preservation of these documents is not handled very well unless you have an extremely good commission with institutional knowledge and responsibility. And the process to, for example, an ANC can now purchase a cell phone and data plan and have it reimbursed. ANC 5B did this term, but the management and ownership of that device is kind of nebulous. In theory, if I FOIA'd them, that commissioner who uses that phone would turn over the phone and all of the documents and data thereof, but maybe not. I'm not sure if that's been adjudicated. And then also, again, it's an extremely complicated process to just get a phone when you have constituents who just want to text you. And I would guess probably 100 of the 300 commissioners already offer their cell phone number up in newsletters and flyers to do constituent services. And so I'm not saying we have to give everybody, BlackBerry when they get elected, but it's very complicated and confusing to just do the basics right now. And that's my biggest concern.
I appreciate it. Commissioner Sroof, what do you think is lacking in the search for the new executive director of the office of the ANC? I will tell you, I don't know that anybody's seen the resumes. The resumes were incredibly strong. So in terms of what we got, I don't think anything was lacking, but you're suggesting something was lacking in the process. I'd like to understand.
Well, I think you're in a much better position to understand the process than I am. What had surprised me is, as a member of the community, I would never have heard that there was an OANC position available. And I thought that there are people in and outside of government that would be interested in knowing about it, and a more aggressive search would have done that. If you are already looking at resumes that you're comfortable with, I would say that's a moot point.
Right. Yeah, this is a constant challenge, whether it's the work that we do or open positions in the government. It is difficult. I don't know that anyone has figured this out. I know that we strive to get it in front of everybody, more people. So we use every avenue we knew of, but I would be the first to admit we could do better. I just don't know where else we could have posted it, but I will tell you, and I hope it makes you feel better. We really did get a robust number of resumes, diverse experiences, and very, very strong candidates. The processes ended up being much more difficult than I expected it to be.
Well, let me just give you two words you can contemplate about: headhunter.
Yeah, those cost money. What I did not have for this was a budget, but I hear you. The other thing I do want to mention from your testimony, I think it's an important point about an advisory committee. There's no legal prohibition right now for the director of the office of ANC to create an advisory committee. In fact, I did encourage the former director to do just such a thing, and I think having an advisory committee of commissioners is very beneficial. You suggested one from every commission. That's a lot of folks. I think it's ideal in some ways, but in some ways not. But also this is something that the director can figure out. But I agree with you that having an advisory committee of commissioners, the folks that you are aiming to serve, is important, particularly if we're going to continue to improve the office. So I agree with you generally on that.
Well, thank you. Just in passing, I had thought that this would be desirable, and that the Monday group came along and seemed to fill some of that need. But it seemed to me that what we need is that it be the responsibility of the liaison person to share what's going on with the other commissioners. I think that's probably not happening now. I think some people are well informed, many people are uninformed. So thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ruckauer, several people mentioned this, but you highlighted it many times, and I just want to make sure we hear it, which is the issue of reference material, sharing information, indexing it. This is something we've heard from commissioners. We've heard it from you before. I agree. It is very, very important. Why reinvent the wheel when the wheel has been well designed many times over? Rather, we should be sort of just improving this work over time. I am confident that the new director is going to take this issue seriously, and we will encourage him to do that as well. So let me thank you all again very much to this panel. I really appreciate your time, your thoughts, your experiences to share with us, and really moving the Office of ANC really to the next level. I'm excited about what's ahead, but again, we generally take our cues from commissioners and former commissioners and those who push the commissions like Mr. Becker. So really appreciate you all being with us today. With that, we will move to our next panel of witnesses. I'm going to ask my staff to remind me where I should go, how far I should go. There we are. Thank you. We're going to go with Commissioner Jeremiah Montague, Kelvin Brown, Chuck Elkins, Ann Mladenoff, John Guggenmose, Vanessa Rubio, Michelle Kia, and Commissioner Trupti Patel. Commissioner Montague, welcome. You are on mute. Yeah. Hopefully the microphone button, there we are. Perfect. Yes.
I really had planned to attend, but not necessarily to run my mouth. I'm having some ANC issues, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad that you recognize that I was here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So I'm trying to get my order here. Commissioner Elkins, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I'm chair of the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee to OANC for Services. We call ourselves ACTOS, which is comprised of 2 commissioners from each ward and 1 at-large member. This committee was not appointed. There was not a committee. We decided we needed one, and we created one. But certainly, we would support the director creating some sort of advisory committee. In the meantime, we've been trying to do some of the staff work that would normally be done by such a committee. The number of commissioners who are members of ACTOS will present the findings of our committee regarding the necessary contents of what we see as an OANC strategic plan. Our recommendations are not a strategic plan, but I hope they are a core to those or an assistance to that strategic plan. As we all know, democracy is more than just one person, one vote. Democracy is also people of different backgrounds and different interests and experiences talking, sharing their interests and priorities, finding that they have common problems and wanting to do something about them. And sometimes this means getting together down at the district building. Sometimes it's talking to their ANC commissioner. There are currently 296 commissioners, as you know. Redistricting will bring us many more, maybe 40. We represent the level of district government closest to the people, with eyes and ears on the street, hearing about problems and needs for service from DC agencies, and putting our minds to work to fashion solutions to make our city function better. We're helping individual citizens deal with agencies that they sometimes see as big and unapproachable. At the same time, these agencies want to deliver their services, but have problems reaching the people in the neighborhoods. So we amplify these agencies' voices to the neighborhood, and we amplify the voices of the neighbors about issues that need to be heard downtown. So that's democracy at work. But where is the support for this democratic process? At every 2-year election, approximately 1/3 of our commissioners leave office, feeling in many cases it was not possible to be as effective as they hoped they could be. As a consequence, every 2 years, 100 or so new and talented ANC commissioners come into office ready to serve. However, they then find that the district has a very small and fragile support system to help them quickly learn how to deal with the wide set of complex problems in their respective neighborhoods. Now, to be sure, OANC does offer ANC orientation training covering the mechanics of holding meetings. But what does a new commissioner do when a big developer shows up with a request to the Board of Zoning Adjustment to approve a variance for a major piece of property in this commissioner's neighborhood? That's a tough problem for any of us, even if we've served more than one term. The same applies to public space permits, DDOT notices of intent, or other questions related to district laws and regulations. Where's the staff that says to this commissioner, don't worry, we've got your back. We have a set of on-demand training sessions, plus we have a group of experienced commissioners who have been through this before and are ready to help you. In addition, we have access to experts on retainer who can help you with some of the specific technical aspects so that you can feel confident that you know the process, can explain it to your constituents, and will be able to look out for the public interest even if you have been on the job for only 2 months. Where is that kind of support? It hasn't been there in the past. In fact, OANC has not seen this as part of their job. So why is this? Well, I believe the major reason is that OANC has such a small staff that they have to concentrate on training commissioners on how to conduct business at their meetings while staying within the constraints of the ANC Act, including the stewardship of their finances. The OANC staff has little or no time to help with what is really the core of the commissioner's work, dealing with real-world issues involving a large variety of DC agencies and their complex programs and policies. To put these staff resources in perspective, the 5.5 positions currently allotted to OANC is the same size staff or smaller than the staff provided to each council member. This is to support 296 commissioners and more next year, not just as they attend monthly meetings, but to carry out their core functions the other 29 days of the month. We appreciate the funds that the district allocates each year to allow each commission to hire a part-time staff person, but these funds are no substitute for a strong central office staff to provide services on an organized, coordinated, and centralized basis. My fellow ACTOS committee members will be addressing the expanded set of functions for OANC necessary to bring the mission and the functions of that office into sync with the needs of commissioners who form this very important and unique institution of our city's democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Commissioner Mladenoff.
Thank you very much, Councilmember White and the committee for having this roundtable. My name is Anc Advisory. I'm the commissioner in ANC 3B, Clover Park Cathedral Heights. I'm very happy to be speaking with you today as one of the many. Sorry, I'm trying to turn on my video because it is not showing.
There we are.
Many commissioners have signed up to be witnesses, and I really appreciate hearing from all of them. I know that I'll also be followed by several other members of ACTOS, the advisory committee that Chuck Elkins has just mentioned. Thank you, Chuck. As he said, the A in ACTOS is for advisory, not advocate or action, but advisory. And we have worked very hard from the month we were formed, which was June 2021, as Chuck said, to try to evaluate some of the key points that we thought would provide a foundation for the strategic plan that you have put into the budget and are looking forward to from new director. So I wanted to talk a bit today about the process and the people. Process and people, those are two of the core elements that ANCs work with. And first, I want to thank Chuck for leading the ACTOS group and all of the members who have served. We had 11 members 17 members, 2 from each ward, so 16, plus a very important at-large member, Chander Jairaman. And if others didn't realize, Chander has been an essential part of bringing together the commissioners over the last few years, as he mentioned in the first time ever Commissioner Caucus. And I just can't thank him enough for bringing us together. Many of the Actos members met each other and have worked together through the 2 years on those Monday discussions, and it built a trust and knowledge of issues and also ability to work across ward lines and commission lines. And it's just been really important. I thank also all of the ANC commissioners who participated in the Actos surveys, which provided the input for a lot of the conclusions. As others have said, our survey is just a first step. We asked commissioners through a series of outreach mechanisms, what are the key functions that they perform? What are the areas where they need support? How could OANC better support them through specific recommendations? And then we compiled all the recommendations we got, grouped into 5 categories, and asked them, would you support this recommendation? And we tallied all the responses. We had 115 respondents from all wards. And I've shared in my written testimony the breakdown, but all wards are well represented. And most of the recommendations got very high levels of support, between 99% and 68% of the respondents. Now, we understand that most of the respondents were self-selected people who were interested in this topic and had ideas, most likely, about improvements. So perhaps it's not surprising that they would support a lot of these improvements, but it also indicates from this nearly 40% of all commissioners that there is a great interest in improvements to the services that all of us receive. And these are not just add-ons. These are essential, basic functions that ANCs and commissioners have to carry out day to day, week to week, month to month. We have appreciated the support from OANC, but there's always more. And some of the basic functions have really not been served adequately for the needs of today. As you highlighted, the needs are increasing, and now they're going to be increasing further as the issues get more complex, the technology comes along, and we have even more commissioners. So it is extremely important to focus on these things. A strategic plan has to look at priorities, as some of my fellow witnesses have mentioned. Strategic plan has to balance the resources available, the money, the staff, against the mission, and try to pick out what's most urgent. We look forward to working with the new director and the council committee on that effort, because it is very important, the vision for the future in carrying out this really important mission that ANCs perform for the city. We are the closest to the people and all over the city, trying to do our work, be the voice of residents, and look out for the general well-being of the district. It is clear from our outreach and the survey that we need more support and assistance, and also more staff at OANC. I have said this before, it is a tiny staff. It was 2.5 people for most of the years. Now it is 5.5, and we've got a very large number of functions needed. So we're looking forward to the future months and the council's efforts in the budget hearing, and we'll look forward to talking again.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mladenov. Commissioner Guggenmoos, welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember White, and I will do my best to get this in 5 minutes. But thank you for the opportunity to testify in front of the committee. I'm John Guggenmoos. I'm testifying as an Actos committee member and as a single member commissioner for 2F02 in Logan Circle. I've served multiple terms as the vice chair and at the chair of 2F. I've chaired and served on various ANC committees in 1B, 2F, and as a 34-year resident of Logan Circle, I attended countless meetings. But as an Actos member, committee member, my testimony is going to focus on education, and specifically on on-demand education. I have probably one of the most straightforward topics: the need and the desire for training and education at any age for any group. It's not a unique idea. But to me, what was interesting is 9 out of 10 commissioners surveyed felt that the importance of training Commissioners across the city overwhelmingly requested on-demand training, 80%, and 92% said they would like professional experts when available to discuss complex problems. There's no misinterpretation of those numbers. The commissioners are not on the fence about training. Education and learning the role of an ANC has traditionally come mainly in putting in the time gained experience after being elected commissioner on the job with the binder in hand that most of our new commissioners felt was of no use. I've always attended ANC meetings, and in part for business and to stay connected, but those 30 years were my on-the-job training sessions that I learned much on the pillars of our neighborhood and the veteran leaders before me. ANCs are in the business of doing one thing: supporting the quality life of our constituents. Connecting our residents to government and overall community is a direct result of how effective we are, how connected we are, how knowledgeable we are about government functioning. And experience does matter. The pandemic has put the rise of digital age, social media, and technological needs on hyperspeed and has forever changed residents' expectations. Residents want answers and problems solved immediately. And we need commissioners training and a vast increase of information to meet those expectations. Council member, I've always given it to you straight. You know exactly what I'm thinking, but I've been told by a number of commissioners, by an overwhelming number, that they're not going to run again, that they're going to resign either midterm. And I'm one of them that's considering that. There are so many veteran commissioners that are not running that we're looking at a generation of professionalism, expertise, and dedication to our neighborhood lost. It's going to be hard to measure the impact. The flood of departures this next year, with what we've already seen, will drain our expertise, our ANC's expertise at a hinge moment from reemerging from COVID. This should alarm all of our council members, as we are the unpaid constituent services of their office. We keep the frontline anger on ABRA issues and licenses out, the fear of crime and other functions. For those functions, we are a bargain to our council members. Can you imagine all liquor licenses being held in the council member's office instead of the ANC level? We're losing some awesome talent, which makes education more critical than ever. If this was a business, we know trained employees function much better than untrained employees. So that's where we are, is new commissioners are being trained by seasoned commissioners. To that extent that we do have the traditional training methods of a binder and 8 hours on a Saturday just do not keep up with the potential desire and needs for our commissioners. What their desire is for on-demand training, and that means video. Anyone who served on a jury duty has seen that video explaining what's going to happen today and made in the 1980s and understands its limits. Screencast video productions are an issue. They're ineffective, they're time-consuming, they're usually of poor quality and of a high budget. And we don't need a study that says no video is better than a wrong one. But there is a low-cost, effective, low-hanging fruit. It's producing animated videos. The cost of animation companies charged for full service has dramatically dropped. From storyboarding to writing the scripts, from hiring the voiceovers to a finished product, they can do it all, and they can do multiple videos at the same time. They have attractive videos that are impactful. We see animation in Harvard education. Corporate trainings, animations embraced by Apple, Google. We see it as the FDA safety videos on planes. Animation is a great way to simplify complex concepts and ideas. The message becomes simple to consume and digest. And with animation, you can get to a granular level of explaining a concept. It can demonstrate a product, an educational need. And best of all is that when you build out a library of on-demand animation training videos, they can change. You can edit them easily. As things change, government policies change. The biggest gift in choosing an animated video is the ability to make those necessary changes. They're timeless. and I am well over my time. Thank you. But for the budget, I hope this is a low-hanging fruit of something that we can achieve.
Thank you, Commissioner Guggenmoos. Idea of animation is cool. I don't know if you've seen Commissioner Elkins' stick figures though, because you may have somebody who can run point on this.
No offense, Commissioner, but there are some other companies I'd like us to look at if we actually go that route to put everything on demand.
Commissioner, is it Kai?
Yes, it's
Okay,
Commissioner
well, I
Kai.
apologize for mispronouncing it earlier.
No,
Welcome.
that's all right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. I do thank you for this opportunity to be heard. My name is Michelle Kai, SMD 8B05, Treasurer of ANC 8B. Proudly serving my first commission term. I'm also a native Washingtonian, born and raised in Ward 5, the Brooklyn Catholic University community. My testimony today focuses on training and how I see the OANC contributing to the enhancement of new commissioner effectiveness in the future. Last year, I was one of the treasurers for whom Ms. Dickerson of the OANC conducted a one-on-one review of the quarterly financial report procedure. The session gave me great confidence in approaching the tasks involved. The QFR Quick Start Guide was an excellent attachment and tool. Of course, a one-on-one training will be impossible to perform over 40 commissions. However, new commissioners could certainly benefit from a specialized guide. I recommend the OANC develop a new commissioner quick start guide. The OANC could create this guide to capture tasks hiding in plain sight, not just those related to our procedural and financial requirements, but tasks related to the various district agencies. As a new commissioner, you simply don't know what you don't know. There is a life outside the monthly public meeting and tasks to be identified if you know what to look for. The OANC should develop this quick start guide to detail procedure and resources for matters that require attention and protocol knowledge across a wide set of tasks, such as BZA cases, a tickler to scan for existing cases in your SMD and procedural steps to take. Knowing what to expect in the upcoming hearing and how to present effective argument is very helpful. Mpd Crime Cards, a preliminary review of crime cards to gain an understanding of how this resource works and what the real-time statistics are in your SMD so that you can interact effectively with both your constituents and the police district officers. PSA meetings. Are you connected and prioritized to promote attendance and involvement by your constituents in monthly PSA meetings? And what about existing settlement agreements for business establishments in your SMD? Being aware to check for these agreements will give a new commissioner the critical eye needed and an understanding of what the community has established as priority concerns and to make sure that these establishments comply with these agreements. These are just a few operational tasks that arise and require efficient reflex and attention by commissioners. An OANC quick reference guide will give new commissioners a head start to get in front of tasks that lie right beneath the surface waiting to pop up. Added to the OANC strategic plan, I think this recommendation would make a real difference for new commissioners. Some have said it takes at least 2 years for new commissioners to learn their job. This is not acceptable. I do believe that an expanded set of services from OANC can help new commissioners become effective much quicker than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Yes.
And finally, for this panel, Commissioner Patel, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairperson White. I guess you always like to save me for last. Best of luck for last, right?
That's right. That's right.
So I am going to modify the written comments that I did send to you before, ahead before time. So I am going to go ahead and start. Good afternoon, Chairperson White. I am Tripti Patel of ANC 2A03. I'm here today to lend my voice and my observations on how we can make the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, OANC, more effective and efficient. I've been a commissioner now for 4 years. I'm only as effective as the resource I have to look to, which is at OAONC. Honestly, I haven't used the OAONC as much as I would like to. The best resources have actually been my colleagues, such as Commissioner Jayaraman and Commissioner Elkins, basically all of the Actos members. That's only because I took the initiative to reach out and to be curious. For a position that we do in a volunteer capacity with no monetary compensation, has the position less than desirable for many. I myself constantly wonder why I still do this position. Many of my friends around the country constantly say, why are you letting yourself be exploited? For many of us, it isn't about money or anything of that sort. We have in common that we love the city that we call home. We want it to be the one that functions for all those who live in it. I've seen a good bit of colleagues, as I started with, not come back. Why? Simply for the fact of burnout from this position. How can you expect us to do an excellent job when the very resource you've given us doesn't even begin to meet our needs? OANC is woefully understaffed, and now due to the census, it's only going to grow. We have the unique opportunity to have this resource properly function and serve as it's intended. While my colleagues have been great in making sure I put my best foot forward, it's been frustrating as they figured it out. We've all figured it out with no help, little to no help. Rather than see many of the sharp, brilliant, talented individuals that come through the door every 2 years not leave due to no infrastructure support, they and now myself have taken up another position to pass on our knowledge. This is not now, in no way to place blame on OANC, but to highlight that there is a dire need for this agency and it needs to be prioritized versus being an afterthought. How can I be your eyes and ears for this city so we can build back better or have a safe and just reopen? Residents don't feel heard or listened to. I constantly get told, what's the point in having ANCs if we're not listened to or respected? We can't help others if we're not having the help and support we need to be effective. That starts with properly staffing the OANC and making sure it has funding to operate in a manner that isn't seen on as one where all those who work in the entity is being overwhelmed and underwater. Don't assume that since there isn't a line of ANC signed up for this roundtable that they don't care. It's the opposite, but the wariness of being let down and disappointed by those who are in charge and not feeling like they're respected. Sadly, we know that all ANCs are not equal. There is no uniformity in how ANC resolutions are done and even passed. Then there's the digital divide we have to contend with. There's no consistency for ANC websites. Some are way better than others, while commissions don't even have a website. As an arm of the government, doesn't that alarm you? That your eyes and ears aren't the same everywhere? There has to be a standard of equity as the baseline for ANCs. Not all commissioners are created equal. Some of us have strong subject matter expertise, and many are more than willing to share it. I would like the OANC to propose an incubator of ANCs with this knowledge to pass on to others, a best practices to grow organically and be maintained. If ANCs felt supported by adequate training, support, and peer mentorship, we'd not see the rate of burnout or turnover. We're all here to help serve our city, be the best it can be in demonstrating, sorry, I lost my place, and demonstrating that it can be demoralizing when we feel like we're thrown into the deep side of the pool until to sink or swim. ONC has been the chance to cultivate all the bright talent that come in every 2 years to work for DC residents. Our colleagues are overwhelmingly talk about the disconnect between us, OANC, and DC government. My fellow colleagues and I are here not to just complain and say, fix it. Members of Actis have collaborated for nearly a year to say how we can make this better and not see more people leave the position. I will not lie, I'm feeling exhausted and burnt out. I hope I've done some good while I have been elected, but feeling that I haven't done a good job amplifying issues and concerns of residents. Many of us speak in terms of how much more can we keep keep going instead of saying this position is enabling me to solve problems. However, before a lot more walk out the door, I'm going to bet on us, that a group of ANCs care enough to sacrifice even more of our limited to say, we're tired, but we'd like to stay if there is some true shifting of how things operate. So I hope you take our thoughts and recommendations with the full weight of our position that it affords us.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Patel. I think that's a great way to round out this panel. You know, I do want to highlight we're here. It is hard to hold hearings during the oversight season because that aspect is already sort of wearing us all pretty thin. And I want to give a shout out to my committee staff that is doing this because it's a priority. And we do believe that moving the office of the ANC to the next level will provide the type of supports that will not only allow you all commissioners to serve your residents effectively, but also prevent some of the unnecessary avoidable burnout that you spoke about, that Commissioner Guggenmoos and others have spoken about. And I think that the future of the Office of ANC, and I don't mean distant future, I mean near future, should include, must include many of the things that you all have spoken about and other commissioners, including training to Commissioner Kai, both sort of, you know, that new commissioner quick start training, but also ongoing on-demand training that include, you know, on demand, but also sort of, you know, experts as needed. I can't remember who testified to this, but experts as necessary as refreshers. I think it needs to include, and a lot of this came up at the previous panel, technology resources, including devices, and other technology like websites. We can't be asking people to both, you know, volunteer in these difficult positions, but also build and maintain websites. It just is not practical. I believe the office needs a general counsel because there are times where commissioners need advice, and particularly when that advice is adverse to an agency action, the office of the Attorney General represents the agency. And so then there leaves a question of where does that leave commissioners? But even beyond that, things that we've tried to fund that really need to be pushed more aggressively, resources for hiring experts. I think Commissioner Elkins really laid out an incredible vision in his testimony. Staff that can assist commissioners, on-demand training, experts on retainer, utilizing previous commissioners or even, you know, previous agency directors to give assistance to commissioners, in addition to this sort of resource bank of documents and materials that have been developed and sharpened over time. These are things that are plenty doable. Most of them don't require significant budget asks, but they do take some work and probably expanded staff at the office of ANC. Let me ask this, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Kai, just because I think you are the newest commissioner here, and you testified about the issue of training. If you could expand training for ANCs, what would be the #1 training topic you would like to see added?
The #1 training topic I'd like to see added would be operational, just procedural things that I mentioned that are not exactly, you know, financial or tangible checklists, but things that come up that could actually carry over from, you know, the prior term, that are issues that are there to so that you're able to know what the process is with, like, BZA cases that are active,
Yeah,
or that are coming up. So I think it would be things like that in planning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned something interesting, existing settlement agreements. I guess I could have guessed this, but commissioners don't know the pre-existing settlement agreements unless the commission or previous commissioner sort of tracked that and passed it on. So there's no centralized place for something like that. I mean, that's a pretty vital document thing to know, but that's not in a centralized place. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So as a matter of fact, the Anacostia Coordinating Council had appeared at our meeting and referenced this because they're looking to get feedback from commissioners on what they think about the settlement agreements. Do they think there needs to be change, or just kind of getting a check-in review?
Mhm.
And so I contacted Abra and got a copy of the agreement from 2006, and it was a lot of great information. So all of the things that I questioned, like, okay, exactly what should I be looking for? What do I do with a business or a liquor store?
Yeah.
What should I be looking for? Am I supposed to do something? And when
Yeah.
I read that agreement, everything was absolutely laid
Yeah.
out, and it was an immediate critical eye. So I
Yeah.
thought, wow, I wouldn't have known this. So that's
Yeah.
something that, to have that knowledge of what to check into.
Yeah, I can imagine that can be intimidating too, because you come into this role and you feel like there's an expectation that you know something and you just got
True.
started.
True. Yes, true.
For actually any of the commissioners who have thoughts on this, what agencies do you find most and least responsive to ANC resolutions?
For myself, DCRA.
Most or least? They're the least.
Least.
No disagreement from me.
DDOT.
DDOT.
DDOT especially, and I want to give Director Lott a chance, but DDOT is just, it seems like it's really gotten away. And I feel the DCRA and ABRA are actually quite responsive. But again, I think that's how well each commissioner is connected into their resources. So I can navigate it pretty well, where some of our newer commissioners don't even really know where the e-docs are on DCRA. So it's, again, it's just, it takes 2 to 4 years before you're really up to speed on a variety of issues.
But one of the problems I find, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn. One of the problems I find is that within commissions, we value the experience of older commissioners that have been here since dirt, but sometimes they have fixed perceptions of procedures and policies and how agencies run. And whenever there's a discussion, that framework is not necessarily consistent with the reality of how the agency runs now, good, bad, or indifferent. And you get pushback. When I came in with an agenda. The agenda was to serve my people and to make my community better, and basically to take no prisoners, okay? So I found that within the commission, sometimes there becomes an angst because you're stepping outside of the circle. I truly appreciate my fellow Actos members that are here and the work that they've done and the enthusiasm. I am surprised by the comment from Commissioner Patel, because she's always passionate about what goes on. But let me tell you, this job will suck the life out of you if you let it. And I have family and friends who are telling me to step away, okay? Because it has taken a severe cost against my health, all right? So I, like Commissioner Gugamos, who I know from a long time ago, I'm trying to do the job. I'm trying to bring the resources. When I came in, as Councilmember White will tell you, you never knew where I was going to show up because I was at everything. And I still tried to go to everything, but then I had people come to me and like, well, why are you there? Why were you there? It's the only way right now under the current situation, you can learn how things really go and what the public's perception of how government works, how ANCs are to be, and the reality of all that, because they're just not in concert with each other.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address your point about responsiveness of the agencies.
Please.
I think we ought to ask, what do we mean by responsiveness? And let me take DDOT as an example. They have recently announced, and they are to be commended, that from now on, they are going to send us a letter back within 60 days whenever we send them a letter. So my first reaction is, this is really great. Because in the past, we've sent it like into a deep hole and you never know what happens, all right? So this is a big improvement. But then I thought, but do we really want a formal letter back from DDOT that besides saying, thank you very much for your letter, et cetera, don't most of these letters that we send really call for a dialogue about the particular problem that we're raising? I mean, we sit out in the community, we don't always know what the best solution is. We see a problem and we're inclined to suggest a few solutions in our letters, but they may not be the right ones. So if DDOT or whatever, I'm just picking on them, they read our letter and they say, well, that's not going to work. It's against the FHW or FHWA, whatever it is, rule. So we're not doing that. Well, yeah, well, that's great, but we want a dialogue about how you are going to fix the problem.
Right.
Don't tell us that you can't do it. And so what I'm hoping for the future, let me just close with this thought. I'm hoping in the future that the new director will sit down with each of these departments and say, how can ANCs help you do your mission better? They are sending you recommendations. Can you enter into a dialogue with them and help them be helpful to you because they're bringing up these problems? So it's a major step from where we are today. And I don't think individual commissions can do it very well. To be frank, I've tried to address DDOT in this regard, and I'm only one commissioner out of 296. And it would be so much more effective if the director sat down and said, we have these 300 or more commissioners. How can they help you deliver your mission better?
Yeah. Commissioner Patel, did you have something to add?
Yes, it was something I said I was going to address to you, but I ran out of time. But I think it is really, really important that I think the future of OANC needs to address, and that is the concept of bullying. A lot of ANC commissioners have been harassed. I'm actually one of them. There has been a past record of bullying, and it's still happening, and when I tried to reach out to every single government entity arm to express this, the answer I got was, well, we forgot to cover it. And even when I went to OANC, they would be like, well, it hasn't gotten that bad. Nobody's punched you yet. Because they would talk about situations where ANC commissioners have gotten into physical fights. And, I think if we're here to serve, we should have an expectation of safety, not only from harassment and bullying from members of the public, but also from colleagues on this ANC dais. Because there have been colleagues who will take it upon themselves to even cross their own commission lines to say or weigh in and say, well, I don't like that you said this or did that. So I would like OANC to actually put together an actual list of protocol and repercussions if XYZ happens, because believe it or not, ANCs are very, very limited in actions we can take when we have experienced bullying and harassment.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's a complex issue, but not an impossible one. And one of the thoughts that's been on my mind is the need for conflict resolution, sometimes between commissioners, sometimes between commissioners and residents. But we may need to sort of look at parameters because sort of prohibiting something without an enforcement action, will leave a lot to be desired. And so the question we have to figure out is what would be the appropriate enforcement action, and how would we define bullying so that, it would be, there would be teeth in whatever we do. And so let's think through what that might look like, particularly as we get a new director on board. Commissioner Guggenmoos.
Yes, we'll make these really, really quick. Just, when the mayor started her portal, that was 10 days that every agency listed there was going to respond to us. Sorry about that. And just, again, the more efficient or the more trained that we can get all of our commissioners, the better we'll have. But, just in speaking to what the commissioner talked about in bullying, there used to be a time that there was a consequence for lying, but especially with constituents, you can just make up anything. At some point, though, when the OANC or even BEGA you spoke to them, you've looked into them, we need to have defense for us. So it's just a letter said, nope, we've done it. There is no ethical issue here. There is no conflict of issue here. We need some backup. We need some help in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank this panel. I know we have one more panel of commissioners, but as I said to the first panel, really appreciate your thoughtful additions as we, as a group, as a city, as commissioners, as a council, grapple with the future of the Office of ANC and really what we need to consider including in a strategic plan for this office, as there have been sort of so many recommendations. We've heard many of them today. Over the years, we are challenged with kind of sorting out how we prioritize and get and make these asks actionable. So thank you all so much for your help participation in this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Just Chairperson White, I just want to say I'm more than happy to work with you about anti-bullying stuff. Actually, I'm part of the National Bullying Coalition. So
wonderful. I appreciate it. We would be happy to.
More than happy to get a call about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to turn to our last panel of witnesses. Final panel will include Commissioner Emily Singer-Lucio, Commissioner Dieter Morales, Commissioner Randy Speck, and Commissioner Salim Adolfo. Commissioner Lucio, welcome.
Good afternoon, Councilmember White. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How's that lovely daughter of yours?
They're both doing well, thank you. And it's even easier when I'm having hearings without them here. So,
well, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today, Councilmember White, and the members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about this very important issue, and I greatly appreciate your time today. As you mentioned, my name is Emily Singer-Lucio, and I'm an ANC Advisory Commissioner, an Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner from 5803, here to share my views on the ways of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commission, OANC, can enhance its support to the ANC commissioners. First, let me reiterate the importance of the OANC providing support to the ANC commissioners, particularly in the interactions with district agencies. So much of our work for our communities and constituents relates to policies and services of district agencies. In the recent survey sent to ANC commissioners by the Actos group, the vast majority wanted more help from OANC in learning more about district agency policies, processes, and issues and interactions between district agencies and ANCs. It is important to note that among related recommendations, the commissioners responding to the survey expressed a high degree of support for OANC to, one, help commissioners find and connect with the key district agency officials and liaisons, 79%, broaden electronic on-demand training on agency-specific issues, 80%, monitor and seek improvements in agency interactions with ANC, 82%, intervene where needed to help ANC commissioners obtain appropriate action by agencies, 82%, work with agencies to make 311 requests and their disposition known to commissioners, 84%, provide assistance in accessing existing data from agencies or in collecting new data to support commission decision-making, 86%, encourage agencies to give timely notice to ANCs, consider ANC recommendations and make their decisions and their reasoning more transparent, 90%. Again, as you can see, ANC commissioners overwhelmingly support increased efforts by OANC to help create strong and effective connections between ANCs and district agencies. I can tell you that during the course of my 2 terms, I have worked closely with many district agencies, DDOT, DCRA, DPW, and DC Water on behalf of my constituents. Unfortunately, despite there being designated liaisons for ANC commissioners within these district agencies, it often takes multiple attempts and several communications before receiving adequate responses or actions to resolve these issues. Therefore, as the survey suggests, ANC commissioners would like OANC to work with the district agencies to expedite workflow and be a strong conduit between ANC and the district agencies. OANC should ensure that each district agency has a designated liaison and make that list widely available to all ANC commissioners so that we can make every attempt to resolve issues when possible, and we can also rely on the OANC to support when necessary. As an ANC commissioner, I understand the value of connecting our communities and commissions together so we can learn from each other, share ideas, and work to achieve common goals. That is why I think it is important for the OANC to host periodic meetings with the ANC commissioners from around the district and agency liaisons as a way to ensure all ANC commissioners have an opportunity to learn about how we can best make connections and utilize the district agencies to better support our residents. That isn't just a one-way process. When these connections are working, ANC commissioners can serve as important support for the district agencies as well. We can provide feedback on how agencies can serve the residents better, and since we know what is going on in our neighborhoods, we can help the district agencies be more aware of specific community issues. That will help the district agencies serve our residents and even more effectively. To be clear, I have thus far been very supportive of the role and efforts of OANC, but we have an opportunity now to make this office even better so it can provide the support that we as ANC commissioners are recognizing as important to the residents of the District of Columbia. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my suggestions on areas for improving OANC services, and I'd be happy to provide any further support to help with that process respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Morales, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman. Chairperson Robert White, my name is Dieter Lehman Morales, and I am the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner for Single Member District 1A02, proudly representing the residents of Columbia Heights. I appear before you today, both in my capacity as a commissioner and as a member of the Advisory Committee on the OANC for Services, or ACTOS. By now, you have already heard from many of my colleagues on that committee about some of the findings from our report based on the survey that we disseminated to our fellow commissioners late last year. My testimony today will be focused on 2 portions of that report, specifically the sections on collaboration amongst commissioners district-wide and increasing public awareness and use of ANCs. As a first-term commissioner and a millennial commissioner at that, the very first thing that I noticed after being sworn in was the inability of commissioners to communicate with one another and the absence of a space for commissioners where collaboration and discussion could take place. I recall contacting then OANC Director Gottlieb Simon about this disturbing observation, thinking it was just a result of my ignorance as a new commissioner. However, when I asked if we had any manner to engage with our fellow commissioners, I was told that the only tool at our disposal was a nearly 300 email address long BCC list that we could use to send email blasts to other commissioners. Quite frankly, this is unacceptable and shows how little regard the district government holds for our positions as elected officials. And as our report demonstrates, I am not alone in feeling this way. 86% of respondents expressed that they would like the OANC to help them identify common interests among commissioners where collaboration may be beneficial. 88% of respondents expressed that they would like the OANC to actively identify opportunities for ANCs to collaborate on district-wide issues. And a whopping 99% of respondents expressed that they would like the OANC to facilitate the sharing of information and resources among ANCs on district-wide subjects. While we may be entrusted with representing our individual communities in these roles, there are many issues facing our district today that impact all Washingtonians and require us to work together across ANCs to resolve. This issue is further complicated by the fact that many Washingtonians, some of them are very own neighbors, aren't even aware of the existence of ANCs, let alone who their representative is and what they do. And again, the results of our survey bear that out. According to our report, 66% of respondents expressed that they would like the OANC to monitor agencies' training of their own staff regarding working with ANCs. 69% of respondents have expressed that they would like the OANC to develop an annual district-wide report on the accomplishments of ANCs in order to offer solutions and share best practices for attracting constituents' attention and involvement. And 76% of respondents expressed that they would like the OANC to implement an educational campaign regarding ANCs directed at the public, DC agencies, and the council itself. I'm not a betting man, but I would be willing to wager that most of you on the council, including your staffs, do not know who your individual ANCs are. Before I conclude and yield to the remaining commissioners on this panel, I want to leave you all with something to ponder. There are an estimated 50 or so additional commissioners expected to join our ranks after redistricting is completed. How is a de facto legislative body like ours, composed of over 300 elected officials, expected to work under these conditions if we are to try to resolve our district's many issues? I urge the council to seize this moment before it gets worse, to properly staff, fund, and equip the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners so that they, in conjunction with us, can provide our constituents with the quality of service that they deserve and should come to expect from their local government. And with that, I will yield the remainder of my time back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Speck, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman White. I first want to acknowledge what's incredibly obvious, and that is that you've got an incredible reservoir of talent and experience and expertise among the commissioners. This has been a really stunning display, I think, of the commissioners in this city who are committed to the district and committed to their jobs. That's really incredible. I'm Randy Speck. I'm the chair of ANC 34G, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about the strategic plan for the OANC. During my 9 years on the commission, I've worked with and learned from veteran commissioners across the district who could draw on decades of experience, as well as newly elected commissioners who approach this job with fresh ideas and insights. As a member of ACTOS, I helped to prepare our report on the needed enhancements for the OANC and the accompanying survey of ANC commissioners. My testimony will focus on one element of that report, the help that commissions need in order to operate efficiently. My commission, like many others, has experienced significant turnover in the last year, with 6 of our 7 commissioners still in their first terms. I have seen how difficult it is for them to climb a steep learning curve as they attempt to master a dizzying array of subjects while struggling to engage with their constituents in an effort to serve them better. They have been shocked at how little support is available from the OANC on fundamental tools, including templates for basic documents, guidelines for issues that arise frequently, and modern technologies that would make their work simpler. These concerns are confirmed by the ACTOS survey of commissioners across the district. Like the veteran commissioners involved in ACTOS, a new commissioner in my ANC looked at the list of recommendations getting the greatest support in the survey and noted that these were exactly the areas of OANC support that had been missing and needed the most. I'm going to focus on those that received 80% or more of responses from commissioners. First, 89% of commissioners want convenient access to key documents by current bylaws, annual reports, grants, resolutions, and testimony. These documents are the historical backbone of the commission and can guide commissioners in addressing new issues as they arise. Several other commissioners have talked about this as well. Second, 89% of commissioners also supported the recommendation that the OANC offer technical and financial assistance to ANCs for communicating with constituents, including printing services, software, hybrid meeting technology, and piloting of new methods. The OANC has indicated that they will be contracting for software, and that's greatly appreciated. Nevertheless, it will inevitably require continued OANC support and assessments of the software to get the most from that resource. Commissioner Elkins has talked, I think, extensively about hybrid meetings, and we certainly need some help there. Third, 87% of commissioners who responded to the ACTOS survey want OANC to provide templates for such everyday needs as websites, agendas, minutes, resolutions, and annual reports. You mentioned annual reports in your opening statement. I think that's really important and can be used much more effectively. Commission websites now vary enormously in both style and available information. The OANC can provide at least minimal standards and facilitate more useful websites. There's no need for the commissions to reinvent form documents when effective models are available and not widely known. Fourth, 84% of commissioners agree that the OANC should streamline its financial reporting system. Despite training sessions and regular assistance from OANC staff, ANC treasurers continue to struggle preparing the required quarterly financial reports. Small errors can jeopardize a commission's quarterly applications. Most treasurers were not trained accountants, did not come to the commission for the love of financial reporting. The OANC should do as much as possible to relieve treasurers of this unwanted task by simplifying the entire process. Fifth, 83% of commissioners respondents urged the OANC to enhance the commissioner's ANC handbook to provide training in the basic running of commissions. We've talked about that, and several commissioners have brought that up. Finally, 81% of commissioners want OANC to provide advanced review and clearer guidance on allowable grants and expenditures. I've testified before your committee in 2019 and in 2020 about the lack of guidelines for grants, and this is something that really needs to be addressed. Commissioners want to make grants, but they sorely need unambiguous guidance, including examples. There are several other recommendations that received at least 70% of commissioners' support, but there's broad support for all the recommendations for ways to help commissions operate more effectively and efficiently. We urge the OANC's new executive director to include these enhancements in the OANC's strategic plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, commissioners. I think that is everyone on this panel. Let me just give a second to make sure no one showed up. Well, let me jump into questions. Sorry, let me make sure. So a lot of really good recommendations. Most of these recommendations not unique. Some of these things, frankly, we funded a couple of years ago, and I'm frustrated that they are not sort of moving yet. Others are part of why we need this strategic plan to really start to push in a coordinated fashion. We have so many commissioners showing up year after year, advocating for things. With a strategic plan, I see us sort of all pushing in the same direction and being able to get these things done more quickly. Because we're sort of unifying ourselves around the process and a vision. So I'm excited about the near-term improvements for the Office of ANC. Let me ask a couple of things, because there have been so many really good recommendations. Let me start with this, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Speck. What support do you think you'd need for your ANC to be more accessible to the community or to your constituents?
Well, we really need a better way to communicate with them. There's really all of our commissioners, these 6 new commissioners who've just come on in the last year, every one of them said when they got on, how am I supposed to communicate with my constituents? I don't have email addresses. I don't have addresses, mail addresses. The best thing I can do is just go door to door. And so a lot of them do that. And that's the only way we can communicate with our constituents. We need a very modern way to communicate that gets to everybody in the community, not just those who are able to use computers effectively. We need to be able to reach everyone. And there's really no way to do that now, no systematic way. And all of my commissioners are really, really frustrated by that.
Okay. Commissioner Lucio.
Thank you. If I could add to that, I think that Commissioner Speck is spot on about that. I think one of the biggest issues is that, I have done some door to door, but I think that, I have tried to build, and I will admit it's through my own way of doing it, not necessarily through a government run one. And we need to have universal government ways to have an email list amongst our constituents. So, I've tried to build that, and I try and add people as often as I can through connections to say, hey, if you call two friends, get your two neighbors to join our email list, right? And I still don't have, I think, or as of today, I think I only have 120 people on there. That's nowhere near the number of constituents in my single member district. And so I think that there needs to be a way. We know these records exist through the Board of Elections. We need to have a way by email, as for those who have email, to contact our residents when we are elected to these offices, so that we have a built-in database. I mean, there's walking lists prepared, when you run for office, right? So we know this information exists. And so I think it would be helpful to have something similar available to each new elected commissioner, so that they have a database of all the constituents in their community. Now, granted, that's not going to work for everybody because not everybody's on computer, but I think you have to have a starting point to at least reach the majority of people. The one other point I wanted to make in answer to your question, and I think what's coming, in terms of you used my favorite word in terms of how to be accessible. So I will say that I think that the other thing that needs to be a priority in terms of commissions is how to make the meetings accessible to the people with disabilities. And you mentioned in your opening remarks about, people who are deaf and blind, which is critically important. But the other piece of that, which I continue to mention, is about those who are blind and low vision, especially if we're going to continue this hybrid model or virtual model, because we use PowerPoint slides. We have guests who present PowerPoint slides, things like that. The one other thing I wanted to mention is that I think we have a really good resource in the city, and that's the disability office with Matt McCullough, that we don't utilize enough in that regard. Because I think that, I had a conversation with him because a lot of ANCs, as well as other political groups around the city, use MailChimp to distribute things. And Matt has said on a number of occasions that MailChimp is not accessible. Now, I have not verified that for a fact myself, but I think that we need to figure out whatever form of communication we're going to use to distribute information about meeting notices or other things. We need to make sure that that's accessible to everybody in our community. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And somewhat related, Commissioner Morales, it does seem like an easy enough list to have a way to engage with fellow commissioners. One of the things I need to check on, we funded 2 or 3 years ago at this point, an app to help to make it easier for commissioners to correspond, particularly with their constituents. Commissioner Speck is one of the commissioners who really push for that. This is the type of thing that hopefully will allow commissioners to communicate with each other as well in a more seamless way. There's been so much mention of collaboration and sort of access to shared documents, templates, and things like that. These are things that are eminently doable and have to be in the very near term part of what the Office of ANC sees as part of its mission. It just is an issue that can't be that difficult to solve, and so I hope that we will see a solution to that much sooner than later.
And I just mentioned one thing about that.
Yeah.
One of the good things that's come from the pandemic has been that commissioners have been talking to each other. We did not do that effectively before. We don't even have a listserv. I mean, that would be a simple little thing to do that could be done tomorrow. And we still don't have a listserv. But commissioners have on their own developed ways over the last 2 years to communicate with each other. This Actos group, Shander's Monday night group, those have been fantastic and they've carried over into lots of other areas too. It's not just those particular activities that we've shared things with. We now know each other better, and we are communicating with each other when we have an issue. And so it's really been, like I said, one of the most fantastic things that's come out of the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I do think that we're on the cusp of something special. There's no perfect solution. I don't want to give the impression that sort of overnight that there's going to be an answer to everything, but in very short order, I do think that we are seeing the process of a significant modernization of the OANC happen, and I believe that commissioners will see the results of it. But it is also important that as we do this, as we put a new director in place, as we move the strategic plan to the finish line, that there be ongoing engagement, whether it's through a formal advisory committee or otherwise, so that there's a constant feedback loop from commissioners saying, look, this is still an outstanding problem. How do we solve it? And that we have created this cohesion across commissioners so that it's not just the office of ANC trying to figure out how to solve these problems, but we're pulling on the sort of experience and intellect of commissioners across the city who come with a broad array of experiences and resources. So I think we have the tools we need. We just really need to push to utilize those resources. So as we round this out, let me give you the final word, Commissioner Lucio.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick. I just want to say that, earlier, and I think this goes to your point, it was mentioned about sort of the need for a central repository of documents, and I can't agree with that more. But one of the things I think that we could also, ways we could enhance that, is to have a website, an actual OANC website, and have an intranet portal within that website for the ANC commissioners, where they can access all the documents. Where, as I mentioned, there is a list that exists of the contacts for all of the DC agencies. It's not always up to date, but if we make it as part of a website and a web page, we can keep it up to date, right? Because there's a lot of turnover in DC agencies, and I think that keeping it up to date is critically important. So I think there needs to be a better electronic way to have that information, so that and a place to go, so that all commissioners, know one centralized place where they can find this information.
I appreciate it. OANC is in the process right now working with Octo on an intranet site. So I hope and expect that we'll hear something coming from that soon. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, commissioners, thank you all again for being part of this hearing. As I said to the previous panels, just having these ideas, the intellect, but also you all taking the time and energy to engage, to move this forward. You all are invested in creating a stronger sort of constellation of commissions across the city and a stronger office of ANC. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
So that concludes our witnesses for today. I want to thank not just the commissioners who were here, but all who commissioners and otherwise, and who testified, and all who watched virtually today. If there's anyone who would like to submit testimony, you can submit written testimony, which will be made part of the official record. If you are interested in doing so, you can submit that testimony by email to the committee at facilities@dccouncil.us, facilities@dccouncil.us. The record for this roundtable will close at the close of business on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. With that, the business before this committee is concluded. The time is now 2:29 p.m. and this roundtable is adjourned. Everybody have a great afternoon.